the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at his rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother. They knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left their own country by another road. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Once the wise sought him, today the wise seek him still. There is the old story of a northerner, a Yankee, a darn Yankee, driving through Alabama and Mississippi. And he came upon a creche scene in a courtyard. And he saw the whole picture there, and the wise men were wearing fire helmets. And he couldn't understand why, so he found a store owner across the street from the courthouse and said, "I understand that whole creche thing, but why are they wearing fire helmets?" And the woman said, "You're a Yankee, aren't you?" He says, "Yeah." "You never read the story, did you?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." "You never read the part where the wise men came from afar?" That's why it's an old story. Fred Craddock tells a story about his father. He tells a story about his father not being church-going. In fact, his father wasn't even of the CME group, the Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter crowd. He was I won't attend unless I really have to crowd. He made sure all of his sons and daughters got to church, but he wasn't going to. And Fred, many years later, when he was able to have an honest conversation with his father, noted that his dad said, "All they want is money." You notice when you go to church, all they're talking about is money. They need money for this. They need money for that. They have this mission that needs money. It's all about the money. Many years later, Fred notes that he was called from his teaching position to go back home because his father was at the end of his life. And as Fred walked into the hospital room, wall to ceiling, wall to wall, were flowers. And on all of the tables were cards. Cards of get well, cards upon which version of the story you have heard first, Fred notes that his father's last words were, "I was wrong." You see, all of those flowers and all of those cards came from the church. Fred's dad would not attend because it was all about the money. Epiphany is like that. Epiphany means literally an unveiling, a revealing. God revealed in the presence of 3 Gentile wise men, seekers of wisdom, watchers of the stars, the scientists of their time. And they had seen a star rising from their spot in the east, and they had followed it. And they came to a house, not a manger, to a house. And they saw a baby, not wrapped in swaddling clothes like the shepherds are told, but with his mother. You know, he was almost 2, apparently. Those of us who have had children and grandchildren know what it's like to have somebody almost 2. My grandson, when he was like 6 months old, found out just how cool it was to crawl under pews. He's 13 now, and he probably still crawls under pews. In one congregation, he liked to sit way back there with Grandma. And there was one lady in the congregation who sat right about where Tracy is. And he would make sure that she was looking, and he would crawl over the pew. Just together. That's what 2-year-olds do. They stretch limits. They learn about what I can and cannot do. By the time he was 3, during the processional hymn, Tyler would make sure that I was about halfway down, and then he would come down behind me, making sure that as he came down, he touched everybody's hand on either side of the church. And it was fun to watch. Finally, I got to the point where I would glance back. It was fun to watch. In those little touches, one could see epiphanies. One could see the presence of the divine in the touch of a child, learning about church and learning exactly what it meant to process with the adults. To sit up in front and watch what went on. To watch children just a little bit older than he light candles and put them out. To hear adults read the Word. To struggle with Naphtali, and Zebulun, and Amalekite, and Amorite. And I know that he, like they, wondered if Pastor Bob purposely picked those verses because there were those nutty words, or if it was just their own. In those hard to pronounce words, there is epiphany. There is an unveiling. There is a challenge to be wise. In being wise, to learn. See, those wise men, there is that old story. Sorry, guys. You've heard it. If the wise men had been women, they would have asked direction. They would have cleaned the stable. And they would have brought a casserole. And I don't have a problem with that. Except the wise men did ask direction. They asked They didn't go to the manger because Jesus wasn't there. And it would have had to have been a kosher casserole. And they were Gentiles. Epiphany is in the details. It is in the challenging parable as John Dominic Crossan continues to teach an audience in Australia. The things that make no sense. Why would 3 wise men or 10 wise men go from a perfectly normal existence, take camels and mules and perhaps horses, and make a journey of 2 years, carrying valuables in their treasure chests, to lay at the feet of a baby of a people who didn't like them? It's a challenging parable. It's a story with a point that makes no sense. If we're in that context, it makes all the sense in the world to us, but we've had 2,000 years to study it. We've had time to think about it. One of the best professors I ever had in seminary was a Greek Orthodox. And as he taught church history up to the Reformation, because he said the rest of the faculty didn't trust him after the big event. The big event, the Reformation, the Catholic Church splitting. And in some sense they were right, because Charles Ashton was stuck in the Greek Orthodox faith. And there had been no Reformation. You want to know how Jesus worshiped? Go to a Greek Orthodox church. You want to know how Paul worshiped? Stand in a Greek Orthodox church for 3 hours on Sunday. If you want to know what worship was in that first generation as John was beginning to work on Revelation, go to a Greek Orthodox church. The men will be here, the women will be there, the men get communion. The language is Greek. Everybody sings. There is no organ. Thank heaven the Reformation happened. Thank heaven wise people sought him once, and today wise seek him still. We are the wise ones. We got the message. We have had it revealed to us. We are, by definition, the light of the world, because Jesus is the light of the world, and we are the body of Christ. The wise who seek him will see him only when they see us. Amen. Let us stand and proclaim